My governor.
Nixon. My governor.
Nixon.
My governor. I believe neither one.
Without a doubt, the Mexican American is becoming politically educated on the issues and the politicians. The Republicans have established a re-elect the president headquarters in Dallas. It's located in a shopping center in an older part of the city and is staffed by Mexican Americans, some of whom were once Democrats.
Ever since I was a child, I had always heard that we are Democrats, but nobody ever really explained to me why. I don't personally feel that it's so much the party as per se, but it's the man, not the party.
I feel that our families have been Democrats in the past simply because the Democratic Party was supposedly the party for the poor. But we're slowly finding out that while they have been the party for the poor, they're maintaining and keeping us poor. So we've had to shift, and we are shifting into the Republican Party because they have a lot more to offer us.
One reason, the Latina Party is working real hard, and trying to elect Muniz, for governor, which are pushing him real hard, and it's hard. I think they will go McGovern all the way too. It's the ones that we have been working with, also in the Grand Prairie area.
Both Nixon and McGovern supporters are working hard to get the Mexican-American vote, and both are optimistic about getting it.
Like I said, I probably won't vote for either one of them.
I take the same view. I seriously consider not voting for either because, I don't know, I just can't see how McGovern has done or is actually trying to get the Spanish-speaking vote by his campaign issues or whatever. And Nixon's just trying to woo us, and I'm seriously
Yeah, but not voting would just do even more harm than...
No, there's not a power of the withholding the vote.
Yeah, but that's allowing somebody undesirable to go into a position with a lot of power. Is that desirable? You can do it to a certain extent. We can keep the worst of the evils from getting in that position.
They're not exactly the same. Well, let's say this: if they were truly hopeful of getting the Mexican American vote, then why did they both deny either attending the Gasolinera convention, which was held in El Paso? They were both extended invitations, and neither one accepted.
Why is it that so much emphasis is placed on just getting the minority vote just around this time of the year? Why is it that, we're almost forgotten, between elections?
When people talk about the Latino vote, they use it as a kind of umbrella term to refer to Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, Cuban Americans. The list goes on and on and on. There's not necessarily a Latino bloc, a group of Latino voters, certainly not that votes the same way. 300,000 newly registered Latino voters in Texas would help make the state purple, maybe even help it flip for the first time since 1976. Texas was, in fact, closer than it was even in 2016. But I think it's also notable that these kind of heavily Mexican-American counties in South Texas moved toward Donald Trump. Ever since Richard Nixon's re-election in 1972, the Republican presidential candidate has won about a quarter or a third of the Latino vote. Sometimes it's gone a little up, sometimes it's gone a little down. I think what's truly curious about this moment is that I don't know that anyone would have predicted that Donald Trump would have been the Republican candidate to even expand Latino support beyond what it was in 2016. But if he wins close to 34 or 35%, that's what Ronald Reagan won in the 1980s at a moment that the Republican Party was much more inclusive. Reagan famously said that we don't need a border wall between the United States and Mexico.
Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems?
Just contrast that with a candidate who started his campaign by calling Mexican immigrants rapists, murderers, and thieves.
Mexico sends its people. They're not sending their best.
And whose first administration has really been defined in some ways by anti-immigrant policy and, of course, all the chance to build the wall. Yet he's winning the same amount of Latino support that Ronald Reagan won in the 1980s. Candidates and campaigns need to engage Latino communities on the ground in different places year-round, even when they're not looking for their votes. And I think that means establishing a presence in Latino communities and listening to Latinos and learning about the things that make Latinos different, that make us similar, what motivates us to engage politically and to want to have an investment in politics in the United States.
So my name is Acacia. I am a reporter with the Associated Press and Report for America. Here, I cover Texas politics and policy and the impact of these in the state and especially in specific communities like the Latino community. So Why does the Latino vote matter, and why are we talking about that today? In Texas, Latino voters present the fastest growing demographic voting group. According to the 2020 census, 1/2 of Texas's 4 million new residents are Latino. The growth led to Texas gaining 2 new congressional seats, which was more than any other state. As well, Texas is home to more Latinos than any other state besides California. And on a national scale, Latinos accounted for more than 1/2 of all of the US population growth in the last decade, according to census statistics. Latinos are not a monolith, and they do not vote as such. So, what are the trends? In recent elections, we have seen that though Latinos tend to lean heavily toward the Democratic Party in Texas and across the country, in recent elections we have seen that the GOP have seen significant gains in the Latino vote, similar to the national split according to the AP Votecast. Where is the Latino vote headed? In 5 US-Mexico border counties, nearly 30,000 people voted in the GOP primary. Just 46 residents in Starr County, Texas, which is near Laredo, cast ballots in the state's Republican primary 2 years ago. In March of 2022, nearly 1,100 Republicans voted in the sparsely populated county in the Texas-Mexico border. That shows us that there is a similar trend of GOP turnout unfolding across South Texas, a long-time Democratic stronghold dominated mostly by Latino voters. Trump won 35% of Hispanic votes nationally in 2020, about the same as he won in Texas, according to the AP Votecast. 1/2 of Latinos right now are ineligible to vote because they are not citizens or they're under the age of 18. But if, as census figures show us, 1 in 4 children in the country are Latino, as a large share, that's a large share of the population that can't mark the ballot yet, but will.
There was a lot going on, but 2020 for me was what I like to call my political awakening. But I feel that 2020, there was no denying what was going on. And for me, it hit most with the children.
Is not treating Latino voters and Latinos in America as this monolith, which frankly a lot of progressives I think have in the past and make assumptions about their views on issues like immigration and others. What did you find in your conversations?
Of course, I think that's the big story, right? Donald Trump did do 10 points better in 2020 than he did in 2016, right? And I think many people dismiss that, right? Many people just saw the banner of Joe Biden winning, that's 60% of Latino voters. But I think that 10% shift is really important, is that today's polarized environment, right? The disinformation, the culture wars that we see every day on TV, the extremism, all of that is feeding off that fear of communism and disinformation. And specifically, you see that in the classrooms, right? That's the clip that we just saw right now, where what we found is that a lot of Latina moms are now finally being awakened through these culture wars, right? They're taking these wars to the school board meetings, to the classrooms. You hear them regurgitating many of the same talking points that white moms do, right? They're against critical race theory. They're against LGBTQ issues. They're against the COVID-19 restrictions. But in this case, that fear of communism makes it even more powerful, right? It makes the paranoia even more forceful because it's now communism infiltrating these classrooms. And that is, I think, a trend that we really have to keep an eye out.
Do you think that part of this is an undercurrent of social conservatism that hasn't been acknowledged by the Democratic political class in making the assumption that Latino voters are more progressive?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we found throughout the entire trip is that almost every single person that we talked to, including the woman that you saw on the screen, every single one of them was a former Democrat, believed that they had to be a Democrat. At one point, they had voted for Obama. I also even found people that volunteered for Bernie Sanders. At one point, they believed that they didn't have the space to sort of entertain their more conservative values in this Democratic Party, right? They didn't fit the specific Democratic Party of what this party is asking Latino voters to look like, to feel like, to talk like. And I think that is at least the heart of what is driving many of these Latino voters, this disenchantment with the Democratic Party. And yes, I think these culture wars and what you're seeing now is sort of uncovering these very innate social conservative values that many Latinos do have. And maybe now with Trump, they feel okay saying that with pride. I think that's a shift.
Across the United States, a political shift is rocking the two major political parties and promising to play a pivotal role in this year's midterm elections.
The shift is among Latino voters. We're going to show you a WSJ analysis of where this shift happened in 2020.
And zoom in on 3 key areas to watch as the midterms approach in 2022. Ready?
I think I'm ready. Latino voters are one of the biggest and fastest growing parts of the electorate, and they swung a lot away from the Democratic Party and toward the Republican Party in 2020.
To better understand political shifts across America, WSJ created this map that brought together electoral, demographic, and economic data at the neighborhood level. By doing this, we found something striking.
In the last presidential election, 3,730 predominantly Latino census tracts shifted to the right, compared to just 352 that shifted left.
What do we know about the shift? What motivated it?
We're still studying it. A lot of people are studying it. But it looks like the most important thing that happened is that the issue mix changed. In 2016, there was a lot of talk about immigration. But in 2020, it was all about the economy and COVID. And when COVID struck, it hit the Rio Grande Valley very hard. But voters hold the kind of jobs that you can't do from home. And so when businesses were shut down, they lost work. And they favored the Republican point of view on keeping businesses open during COVID. Democratic strategists are very worried that the party has become too identified with liberal policy positions on crime and policing and on racial preferences and affirmative action. And I did hear from a number of voters that they thought that the Democratic Party was just not focusing on the issues that were important to them. Today, people might have opinions about abortion, they might have opinions about the economy, they might have opinions about immigration, but that doesn't mean that that issue is the one that's going to make them come out and vote and is going to determine their choice of candidates.
Also in our poll released this week shows some surprising numbers that have given encouragement to Republicans. Our poll indicates a growing number of Hispanic voters appear to be choosing Republican candidates over Democrats. That's contrary to conventional political assumptions. 11 Alive's Doug Richards joins us now with more, Doug.
J. Bell, Hispanic voters frequently get included in a category that we might call voters of color, often viewed as reliably Democratic. But in Georgia, our poll suggests that Republicans are successfully connecting with Hispanic voters. Although Republicans in Georgia and around the country often talk about stopping illegal immigration at the southern border, GOP leaders believe a growing number of Hispanic voters in Georgia have quietly embraced the overall Republican message. An 11 Alive poll appears to show that Republicans Brian Kemp, running for governor, and Herschel Walker, running for the U.S. Senate, have substantial support among Hispanic voters, though not majority support, especially compared to black voters. Our poll showed Kemp with 9% support among black voters, but 35% among Hispanic voters. Walker had 5% support from black voters, 40% support from Hispanic voters.
We believe in family, we believe in faith, we believe in freedom, we believe in democracy. We're very afraid that those socialist policies that we saw in our countries, failing in our countries, are becoming to this one.
Jaime Flores was among those on hand when Republicans opened a Hispanic outreach office in Gwinnett County, part of an effort to grow the GOP beyond its historic base of older white voters.
We as Hispanics, we got a lot of promises from Democrats for many years, and they never delivered. So it's a very good opportunity for Republicans to do so.